she left her grandmother to die. In the village of Amalicha, everyone knew the story of Adama, a girl whose heart had grown as cold as the Harmattan winds that blew each December in the eastern side of Nigeria. But before the whispers and the stares, Adama had been a girl asked to care for her aged grandmother, Mama Uche, and in her time of need, Adama abandoned her. It all started one year when Mama's health began to fail. Her bones ached, her back bent from years of hard work, and her voice, which once told stories to the children in the village, grew faint and raspy. Her only child, Adama's father, Uche, lived in the city and could not leave his job to look after her, and he couldn't afford to pay for someone to do so. Adama's mother decided that the best thing was for Adama to stay with her grandmother for a few months, just to help her manage the small things around the house, until they could make another arrangement. But Mama, why must I go? Adama complained as she watched her mother fold her clothes into a bag. What about Gozie? She's always doing nothing. Let her go. Her mother looked at her with firm eyes. You are Mama's favorite, and you are older and more matured than Gozie. It is only until your admission is confirmed, and then you can come back and resume university. Please, my child. She is old and she needs us now. Adama sighed, throwing her hands up. She's just an old woman. She's been alone before, hasn't she? So why now? Adama, her mother scolded, a flash of anger in her eyes. You will go and you will take good care of her. Even if you don't want to, it is our duty to care for family. Do you understand? Adama frowned but said no more. She knew it was pointless to argue when her mother had that look in her eyes. So, with reluctance and a heavy sigh, she packed her things, grumbling under her breath about how unfair it all was. When she arrived, it was dusk. The house seemed shabby and unkempt to Adama, and the air smelled of old herbs and dried wood. As she stepped inside, she saw her grandmother dozing in a rocking chair in front of the fire. She hissed, feeling irritated. Yes, she had enjoyed the old woman's company and delicious treats each time they returned home for Christmas celebration, but this was different. Why must she be the one to stay in this boring village with this sick woman? As she kept hissing in anger, the old woman woke up from her nap. Adamwam, Mamuche whispered with a faint smile, her eyes lighting up. You are here at last. Adama just nodded, barely looking at her grandmother. She dropped her bag on the floor with a thud and glanced around, noticing how cluttered and shabby everything looked. Mamuche didn't seem to notice her granddaughter's lack of warmth. She held out a trembling hand. Come sit with me, my child. I have been so lonely. Reluctantly, Adama sat down, crossing her arms. I am only here because Mama told me to come. Don't think I am staying forever. Mamuche's smile faded for a moment, but she quickly masked her sadness. I understand, my daughter. Even if it's just for a little while, I am still very grateful. That night, Adama lay on her bed in the corner, listening to her grandmother's labored breathing, annoyed at how the air was filled with the scent of herbs and smoke. Every time Mama Uche stirred or coughed, Adama's irritation grew, until she eventually drifted off to sleep with a frown on her face. Days turned into weeks, and Adama's resentment only deepened. Mama Uche's needs were endless, or so it seemed to her. Every morning she would ask Adama for simple things, like a bowl of water, help to sit up, a hand to steady herself as she walked. And every time Adama would roll her eyes and sigh, as if each request were a mountain too high to climb. Adamwam, Mamuche said one evening, her voice soft and weary, can you help me sit by the fire? My bones aches. Adama huffed, putting down the food she was preparing. Can't you manage on your own, you this old woman? I am not your servant. I am tired of your endless requests. Mamuche looked down, her hands clasped tightly together around her walking cane. I am sorry to trouble you, my child. I just thought that. Well, don't think too much, Adama snapped. I will help when I want to help. Stop calling me for every little thing. Mamuche said nothing, her face a mark of quiet sorrow. As she looked away, she leaned on her cane heavily, trying her best to pull herself up, but her knees trembled, her body crumbling back into the chair with a gasp. See, Adama muttered, you are just making it worse for yourself. The days that followed grew even darker. Whenever Mamuche called for food, Adama would bring her the smallest portions, often cold or poorly prepared. She would throw the bowl down beside her grandmother, not even waiting to see if she needed help in any other way. One evening, after yet another day of cold silence and scornful looks, Mama Uche looked at Adama with tired, pleading eyes. Adam, my child, have I done something to anger you? Anything at all? What have I done against you, my child? Adama folded her hands, refusing to look her in the eyes. You are old and weak, and you depend on me for everything. It is tiring. Why should I be stuck here wasting my life? Sadness spread across Mamuche's face, and she looked into the fire, her lips moving in a quiet, murmured prayer. Adama caught only a few words, but what she heard chilled her. To the spirits of our fathers, to the mothers who watch over us, may they see the truth. May the aching heart of these old bones be reassured, and may those who forget the love of family be reminded again. Adama shivered, but dismissed it as an old woman's mutterings. She had no patience for her grandmother's superstitions or beliefs. To her, they were nothing. Not long after, Mamuche's body gave out, her frail heart unable to bear the weight of neglect and sorrow. When she passed, Adama didn't shed a tear. She simply informed her parents and the villagers and went about her business indifferent to the solemnity of the moment. But the villagers noticed. They saw the way Adama's coldness had worn down the once joyful old woman. Some shook their heads in disapproval, others whispered amongst themselves, spreading stories about what they had seen. Yet Adama didn't care. After Mama's burial and mourning, Adama left the village with her family, a happy girl. As she left the village that day, she held her head high, feeling nothing but relief. She thought she had left everything behind, the smells, the cramped house, the weight of caring for that old woman. What she didn't realize was that she has triggered something far darker, something she could not understand, something that would follow her wherever she went. As Adama left Amucha, she returned to her parents' home. She felt lighter, freed from the responsibility of caring for her grandmother. As she settled back into her life, she quickly pushed Mama's memory to the back of her mind, treating it like a distant dream. Life returned to its usual routine. She worked each morning, helped her mother with chores, and sometimes even visited friends in their streets. The days were calm and uneventful, but something strange began to follow her. At first, it was nothing more than a whisper, a slight shiver down her spine, but soon it became harder to ignore. One evening, as she sat outside with her mother pounding yam for dinner, she felt it. A shadow out of the corner of her eye. She turned quickly, scanning the trees and the fields around their compound, but she saw nothing. Her mother noticed her unease. Adama, what is wrong? She asked. You look like you have seen a ghost. Adama forced a smile, trying to shake off the feeling. Ah, Mama, it is nothing. Maybe I just thought I saw something. Her mother gave her a curious look but said no more, returning to continue her cooking. As the evening wore on, however, Adama couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching her. She glanced over her shoulder every few minutes, her hands trembling slightly as she worked. Days passed and the strange feeling only grew stronger. Every night, As she lay in her bed, she could hear faint whispers in the wind, words she couldn't quite make out. And every morning when she went to fetch water from the stream, she felt a chill run through her as though cold hands were reaching out to her. One afternoon, as she went to visit her friend Amaka, they greeted each other, but Amaka looked at her with concern. "Nne, what is going on with you? You look different," Amaka said, tilting her head to look at her more closely. "Different? How do you mean?" Adama replied, forcing a smile. "You look thinner, tired. Like you have been carrying a heavy load on your back. Are you all right?" Amaka's gaze was filled with worry. Adama hesitated, her smile faltering. "It is nothing, Amaka. Just adjusting to being back again. You know how the village life is." Amaka didn't seem convinced. "You should be careful, Adama. The elders say that when someone treats their family badly, especially the old, the spirits don't look kindly on them. I'm saying this based on what you told me about your grandmother." "Ah, Amaka, please," Adama's cough, brushing off the warning. "You know I don't believe in those superstitious stories." Amaka shrugged, looking unconvinced. Sometimes the things we don't believe in are the ones that haunt us the most. Just be careful, my friend. As Adama walked back home that day from Amaka's house, she couldn't shake her warning. They echoed in her mind, stirring up memories she had tried so hard to bury. The image of Mama's frail body, her sad, disappointed eyes, flashed through her mind, and for the first time she felt a pang of guilt. That night Adama lay awake staring at the ceiling above her. The silence around her was thick, almost suffocating. She pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, trying to keep warm, but a strange chill filled the room. She closed her eyes, hoping sleep would come, but instead she heard it again. A faint whisper, so close it seemed to come from beside her ears. "Adama." Her eyes flew open, her heart pounding. She sat up quickly, scanning the dark room, but saw nothing. She took a shaky breath, trying to calm herself, but the whisper came again, more insistent this time. "Adama, why did you abandon me?" A shiver ran down her back, and she clutched her blanket tighter, her eyes widening. She recognized the voice. It was her grandmother's. She closed her eyes, shaking her head, hoping it was all in her imagination, but the voice grew louder, echoing through the room like a thunder. "Adama, my child, why did you leave me to die?" "No," Adama whispered, covering her ears. "It is not real, it is just a bad dream." The voice faded, leaving her in silence once more. But Adama could no longer find peace. She lay awake for hours, haunted by the memories of her time with Mama. The harsh words she had spoken, the cold looks she had given, the countless times she had refused to help, they all came rushing back one by one, filling her with a guilt she could no longer ignore. But as the days went, the shadows never came back, and eventually she dismissed it all as a fragment of her imagination and continued her life as if they never happened. As the weeks passed, after Adama returned to her parents for Mama Uche's, seemingly leaving behind any trace of the unsettling memories from that time, she was determined to push forward with her life. And she had big dreams that no lingering shadows from her past could hold back. Adama's parents had always placed importance on education. They knew the value of a good schooling, and so did Adama, who had always excelled in her studies. Even as a child, she had shown a natural curiosity and a drive to succeed. Despite the hardships of their lives and limited resources, she never let anything get in the way of her aspirations. One afternoon, Adama burst into the family compound with a gleam of excitement in her eyes. "Mama, Papa," she shouted, barely able to contain her excitement. As she ran up to her mother, who was seated in the veranda, shelling granules. "The results are out." Her mother looked up, a hopeful smile breaking across her face. "And "How did you do, my daughter?" she asked curiously. Adama took a deep breath, her face beaming with pride. "I passed, Mama. I did well to be accepted into the university." Her mother's eyes sparkled with pride as she pulled Adama into a tight embrace. "Chineke be praised. Let God be praised. I knew you would make us proud, Adama. Your hard work has paid off." Her father, who had heard the commotion, joined them in the backyard, his usually serious face softening into a rare smile. "You have done well, Adama," he said, patting her shoulders. "We will support you. Whatever you need to thrive in the university, we will make it happen." She had been admitted to study economics at a reputable university in the city, a dream she had held close to her heart. Her family celebrated her success, the entire community buzzing with pride for the young woman who had made it against all odds. "Adama, you will make us all proud," her sister Gozie teased her one evening as they walked through the market. "One day people will be calling you Madam Accountant or Chief Economist. Just don't forget us small people." Adama laughed, shaking her head. "Ah, Ugochi, how could I forget you? Just pray I don't come back speaking too much English anyway." Two girls giggled together, a sound that filled the air with lightness and joy. When she arrived at the university, the reality of her new life hit her immediately. The campus was vast, bustling with students from all walks of life. The city was noisy and fast-paced, a world away from the quiet, almost rural life she had known. Adama was both excited and overwhelmed by it all. During her first week, she met young men and women. She even met a young man, Chukuma, a young man who came from the same vicinity where her parents resided, who was studying engineering. Chukuma had a warm, friendly look and an easy smile that made Adama feel instantly comfortable. Their friendship grew quickly, and soon Adama found herself spending more time with Chukuma. They would meet to study, discussing their dreams and share laughs over cups of tea in the small cafeteria on the campus. But despite their close friendship, Adama remained focused on her studies, determined to make the most of her time at the university. Over the years, Adama excelled in her studies and her dedication did not go unnoticed by her professors. She became known as one of the brightest students in her program, often leading study groups and assisting her classmates with different assignments. One day, during her final year, she was approached by Dr. Okoro, one of her professors. "Adama, may I have a word with you?" he asked, gesturing for her to sit in his office. "Yes, sir," she replied. Feeling a bit nervous, she wondered what the professor wanted to discuss. Dr. Okoro leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "Adama, I have been observing your progress over the years. You are an exceptional student, and I believe you have a bright future ahead of you. Have you thought about applying for internships? There are companies that would benefit from a mind like yours." Adama's face lit up. "Yes, sir, I have been considering it, but I wasn't sure where to start." Dr. Okoro smiled, handing her a business card. "This is a contact at Ikenga Financial Group. They are looking for interns, and I believe you will be a perfect fit. Prepare your CV and submit it soon. I will recommend you personally." Adama's heart soared with excitement and gratitude. "Thank you so much, sir. I will do my best not to disappoint." With Dr. Okoro's help, Adama secured an internship at Ikenga Financial Group. The experience was challenging, but she thrived, learning quickly and impressing her supervisors with her dedication and attention to details. By the time she graduated, she had not only achieved one of the top scores in her class, but also received a job offer from Ikenga. After graduation, Adama returned home briefly to celebrate with her family before starting her new job in the capital. The entire street turned out to congratulate her, cheering as she recounted her experiences in the big capital. "Ah, Adama, the city girl, don't forget us when you become rich and famous," one of the elders joked, earning laughter from the crowd. "Never, Papa. I will always remember where I came from, Adama replied, her voice filled with sincerity. Her family couldn't have been prouder, and as she left home to start her new life, she carried their blessings and support with her. Adama quickly settled into her role at Ikenga Financial Group. She worked hard, putting in long hours and impressing her colleagues with her drive and skill. As time passed, she climbed the ranks, becoming one of the youngest senior analysts in the company. Her life was finally shaping into everything she had dreamed of. One evening, at a company event, she met Amaka, a charming, intelligent young man who worked in the IT department. They had crossed paths before, but this was the first time they had a real conversation. Adama, Emeka said with a warm smile, offering her a drink. I have heard so much about you, the genius economist they call you. Adama laughed, taking the glass from him. Genius? Ah, they exaggerate. I am just doing my best. Emeka raised an eyebrow, his gaze filled with admiration. Well, doing your best seems to be working out. I have never seen anyone else rise so quickly here. You must have some secrets. Adama shrugged, her cheeks flushing slightly. No secrets, just hard work. And maybe a bit of luck. Their conversation flowed easily, and by the end of the evening, they were exchanging numbers and making plans to meet again. Over the months that followed, Adama and Emeka grew close, their bond deepening with each passing day. Emeka was thoughtful, kind, and had a way of making her feel truly seen and appreciated. One evening after a long day at work, Emeka invited Adama to a quiet spot by the river. The sky was clear and the stars twinkled above them, casting a soft glow over the water. Adama, he began, his voice soft. These past few months with you had been incredible. I never knew I could feel this way about someone. Adama's heart fluttered as she looked into his eyes. Emeka took her hand, his gaze steady and sincere. I know this must sound sudden, but I want to spend my life with you, Adama. Will you marry me? Adama felt tears prick her eyes as she nodded, unable to contain her joy. Yes, Emeka, yes, 1,000 times. Their engagement brought happiness and celebration to both their families, and the entire communities rejoiced at the news. Adama and Emeka were married in a beautiful ceremony filled with love, laughter, and the blessings of their loved ones. As they stood together, hand in hand, Adama couldn't help but feel that her journey had led her to this perfect moment. Despite the struggles and the mistakes of her path, she had found her way to happiness and success, and she vowed to cherish it always. Adama's life seemed perfect. She had achieved everything that she had dreamed of. A successful career, a loving husband, and the respect of her family and community at large. She and Emeka had recently moved into a new house in the city, a beautiful home with wide windows that let in sunlight, filling every corner with warmth, and together they were blessed with children, Choma and Obina. They lived comfortably, their home filled with laughter and the simple joys of family life. Adama was proud of her children, guiding them through school and watching them grow into bright young adults. For many years, it felt as though all the struggles of her past had faded, leaving only the warmth of the present. But as the months passed, Adama began to feel an uneasiness she couldn't quite explain. Sometimes when she was alone, she would catch a glimpse of a shadow out of the corner of her eyes. Other times, she could feel a chill in the air, even on the warmest of days. At first, she dismissed it, chalking it up to stress or adjusting to her new position as executive. But as the strange occurrences continued, even in broad daylight, her unease grew. One evening, as she sat by the window reading, she felt that familiar chill run down her spine. She shivered, rubbing her arms to ward off the cold. Emeka noticed and looked up from his laptop. Are you okay? He asked, his brow creasing with concern. Adama hesitated, then forced a smile. Yes, I am fine, just a bit cold. Emeka frowned, glancing around the room. Cold? But it is warm in here. Do you want me to get you a blanket? She shook her head, brushing off his concern. No, don't worry. It's nothing. But as the days passed, the feeling persisted. Adama couldn't shake the sense that something was watching her, something just beyond her sight. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her work and her life with Amaka, but the sensation clung to her like a shadow. One night, as they lay in bed, Emeka turned to her, his voice soft and filled with worry. Adama, you have seemed distant lately. Is everything okay? Adama bit her lip, unsure of how to explain. She didn't want to worry him with something she couldn't even understand herself. But Emeka's concern was genuine and persistent, and she knew she couldn't keep hiding her unease. There is something, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know. I keep feeling strange, like something is following me. Emeka's eyes softened and he took her hand in his. Following you? What do you mean? Could you explain further? Adama looked away, trying to find the right words. It's like a shadow or a presence. I feel it when I am alone, or sometimes even when I'm with you. It is as if something is haunting me. Emeka held her hand tightly, his face serious. Adama, is there something from your past that you think could be causing this? Adama hesitated again, memories of her grandmother flooding back. The guilt she had buried long ago resurfaced, stirring her heart with a painful pang. She had never told Emeka the full story of her time with Mama, nor the shame she felt for how she had treated her. She just couldn't bring herself to tell him that ugly side of her past, and that was how she died the matter. But life has a way of cycling back, and Adama's past would soon resurface in ways she could never have anticipated. It started as a mild headache, a dull pain in her chest that would come and go, then leave her feeling slightly breathless. At first, she ignored it, thinking it was just exhaustion from juggling work and family responsibilities. But as weeks turned into months, her health began to spiral downward. She started losing weight, and no amount of food or rest seemed to restore her strength. Her skin grew pale, and dark shadows settled under her eyes, giving her an appearance that seemed almost haunted. Concerned, Emeka urged her to see a doctor. They visited specialists, ran countless tests, and tried various treatments, but nothing worked. It was as if an invisible sickness was consuming her from within. One night, Adama sat in her bedroom, struggling to catch her breath. After a single walk down the hallway, she looked into the mirror, her hollow eyes staring back at her, and a memory stirred, a memory she had buried deep. Her grandmother's face flashed in her mind, those sad, disappointed eyes that had watched her so many years ago. She remembered the coldness with which she had treated her grandmother, the sharp words, the refusals, the countless times she had turned her back on the old woman's needs. Mama, she whispered, feeling a shiver run down her spine. The past had caught up with her. She realized. She could feel it in her bones, in the unyielding sickness that defied explanation or cure. It was as though her grandmother's spirit was still there, still watching, perhaps waiting for her to finally understand the pain she had inflicted. As the days wore on, Adama's condition worsened. She could barely get out of bed, her once strong body now frail and weak. Even the simplest tasks became insurmountable. One evening, as she lay in her bed struggling to lift herself, she called out to her daughter. Chioma, she called weakly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Please, come help me sit up. Chioma, who had been busy on her phone, sighed loudly. Mama, I'm tired. Why can't you do it yourself? Adama's heart sank, a pang of sorrow piercing through her at her daughter's coarse reply. She remembered a similar moment long ago when her own grandmother had asked her for help, and she had responded with the same impatience and the same dismissive tone. Now she was on the receiving end, and the sting of it cut deeply. Please, my daughter, she tried again, her voice trembling. I just need a little help. Choma rolled her eyes, barely glancing at her mother. You should try to manage on your own, oh mama. I can't always be here to do everything for you. As Choma left the room, Adama's eyes filled with tears. She lay back staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her past settle heavily on her chest. In that moment, she understood exactly how her grandmother had felt all those years ago. The helplessness, the heartbreak of being treated as a burden by your own children. Weeks turned into months, and Adama's illness showed no sign of improving. Her husband Emeka took her to another round of specialists, hoping that someone would finally diagnose the cause of her suffering. But after each visit, they left with the same hollow answers, the same lack of hope. Even traditional herbs could not help. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Emeka sighed, frustration etched on his face. We have tried everything, he said, his voice tight with exhaustion. The doctors have no answers. The traditionalists have nothing to say. I don't know what else to do. Adama, barely holding herself up at the table, looked at her husband and children, guilt gnawing at her. She knew she could no longer hide the truth. Clearing her throat, she said, her voice weak but steady. There is something I must tell you all, she began. Her eyes lowered, something I have carried with me for a long time. Emeka looked at her puzzled. What do you mean? When I was younger, I went to stay with my grandmother. She was old, frail, and needed someone to care for her. But I didn't treat her well. I was cruel, impatient. I didn't appreciate her, and I left her alone when she needed me most. They listened, their gazes steady as they absorbed her words. After she passed, Adama continued, tears filling her eyes. I thought I had left it all behind, but sometimes I wonder if her spirit is still restless, if she is still angry with me. Choma and Obina exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. And now, Adama continued, her voice breaking. I wonder if this illness is my punishment. I wonder if Mama's spirit is reminding me of the pain I caused her. I am so sorry. I cannot ask for forgiveness, but I needed to tell you the truth. Her family sat in silence, the weight of her confession settling over them like a heavy cloud. Emeka looked at her, his expression unreadable, while Chioma and Obina avoided her gaze, their faces blank. The following days were difficult. Adama's confession seemed to have created an unspoken distance between her and her family, a chasm that grew wider with each passing day. Her children began to withdraw even more, treating her requests for help with the same coldness she had once shown her grandmother. One morning, as she struggled to get up, she called out to Obina, who was in the next room, to come and help her get some water. Obina refused to reply at first, and when he did, his voice was cold and detached. Mom, can't you see I'm busy? I don't have time to keep fetching things for you. Please get up and do them yourself. Adama's heart broke a little more each time her children turned her away. She had once been the strong, dependable mother they could rely on, and they were once an obedient and gracious children. But now she was reduced to a burden much like her grandmother had been to her. The pain of it all ate at her, a constant reminder of the hurt she had once caused. Finally, Emeka made a decision. One evening he sat beside Adama, his face a mark of weariness and frustration. Adama, he said, this isn't working anymore. The children, they are growing resentful and restless. I cannot watch you suffer like this anymore. I think it would be best if you returned to your parents' house, just for a while. Maybe being there will help you find peace. Adama looked at him, her heart sinking. She knew what he meant, even if he hadn't said it outright. He was abandoning her, just like she had once abandoned her grandmother. Emeka, please, she whispered, reaching out to him. Don't leave me alone. I need you. He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. As he stood up, he said, I am sorry, Adama, but I cannot continue like this. The following morning, Emeka helped her pack a small bag, then drove her to her parents' house. The journey was silent, filled with a sense of finality that weighed heavily on both of them. When they arrived, Emeka helped her to the doorstep, then turned to leave without a word. Emeka, Adama called out, her voice breaking, but he didn't look back. As she watched him drive away, Adama felt the full weight of her past descend upon her. She was alone, just as her grandmother had been, and for the first time, she truly understood the depth of her cruelty. The shadows that had haunted her had returned, and she knew that until she found a way to make peace, they would never leave. Adama sat alone in dimly lit room of her parents' house. Her parents now no longer around, and her sister Gozie married and with her own family, so the house was empty except for her. The silence around her. The world seems to close in on her, shadows stretching and shifting as night descended. She had been here for only a few days, but each hour felt like a lifetime. The familiar sounds of her childhood home now echoed back to her with an eerie emptiness, amplifying her solitude. As she reclined on the chair one evening, memories continued to flood her mind, reminding her of all that her grandmother went through, how her grandmother struggled for help that never came. She had been a young, selfish, and impatient child. Now the roles had reversed. Her own children had treated her with the same indifference, and her husband, the man she had once thought would stand by her forever, had left her here to face her suffering alone. Is this my punishment? She whispered to herself, her voice barely audible in the stillness. The wind outside rattled the windows as though in answer. She closed her eyes, her mind drifting back to Mamuche's face, the lines of pain, the unspoken sadness in her eyes, the way she had looked at Adama with quiet disappointment. Her heart ached and she reached up to wipe a tear from her cheek, only to realize that she was too weak to even lift her arm. Every movement felt like a struggle, every breath an effort. She felt trapped within her own body, a prisoner of her guilt and frailty. One night, as she lay alone in the dark, a strange feeling came over her. It was as if the room had grown colder, the air heavy with an otherworldly presence. She opened her eyes, and for a brief moment she saw a shadow near the foot of her bed, a figure that seemed familiar yet distant. "Mama," she whispered, her voice trembling. The shadow didn't move, didn't respond, but Adama could feel the weight of its gaze upon her, a silent judgment that pierced through her soul. She wanted to speak, to beg for forgiveness, but no words could come. Her heart raced as the shadows lingered, filling her with a deep, chilling remorse that seemed to seep into her very bones. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the shadow was gone, leaving her alone once more. The following morning, Ugochi came to see her and found her lying down, looking pale and shivering. And she knelt down beside her sister, placing a gentle hand on her forehead. "Adama, we need to do something. You cannot go on like this." Adama looked up at her sister, her eyes hollow with despair. "Ugochi, I think I am being punished for my past." Her sister's face softened with sadness, but she did not respond. She simply stroked Adama's hair as if trying to offer comfort that words could not convey. And Adama gently told her sister of all that transpired between her and their grandmother when she went to take care of her. Ugochi felt sad at hearing how heartbroken Mama must have felt at the time. One afternoon, as she struggled to take a nap, she heard voices outside, and to her surprise, she saw Chioma and Obinna standing in the doorway looking down at her with unreadable expressions. "Chioma, Obinna," she whispered, a glimmer of hope in her voice. "You came." Chioma crossed her arms, her face expressionless. "Papa sent us," she said. "He thought we should check on you." Adama's heart shattered. She had hoped for compassion, for forgiveness, but her children only echoed the resentment she had once felt to her grandmother. Please, she begged, her voice breaking. I know I was wrong. I have suffered for it. I am still suffering. But you are my children, please. Chioma shook her head, turning away. We don't owe you anything, Mama. Just like you didn't owe your grandmother. Without another word, they left, leaving her alone once more, the door closing with a soft click that seemed to echo in the silence. As Adama lay in her bed that night, her voice choked with remorse, tears streaming down her face as she whispered into the darkness, Mama, I am so sorry. I understand now. I understand how much I have hurt you. I was blind, foolish, cruel, and now I am paying the price. But there was no answer, only the silence of the room pressing down on her, a silence that felt as heavy as her guilt. But she persisted. Every day she cried out in pain and in remorse, in regret, praying, seeking forgiveness, not just from her grandmother's spirit, but also from herself. And as she continued in this path, one evening, as the sun set and cast a soft golden glow over the room, a quiet sense of peace settled over Adama. She closed her eyes and whispered a simple prayer, asking for forgiveness and strength. The moment was filled with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. As if a gentle presence was there comforting her, she thought of her grandmother's spirit and spoke softly into the quiet room. Mama, if you can hear me, I am truly sorry. I understand now. Please, if there is any way, help me find peace. Help me find my way back. And I pray that you will be able to journey forward to find the rest that I have denied you. Please, do not be bitter anymore. As she lay there, the peace settled, the shadows disappeared, and there was a calmness she could not explain. And for the first time in months, Adama slept like a baby. Few days later, she heard a faint knock from the door. She stirred, her strength returning little by little, thinking it might be her sister. But when the door opened, she saw Emeka standing there, his face softened with concern. Behind him, Chioma and Obinna waited, their face filled with a mixture of worry and regret. Emeka, she whispered, struggling to sit up. Emeka stepped forward gently. Adama, he began, his voice low. We are very sorry. We didn't know what we were doing. I don't understand why we did what we did. We just woke up this morning and realized that you were not in the house. And we remembered all that has transpired. We are very sorry. And we have come to take you home. A wave of emotion washed over her and she looked up at him, her eyes filling with tears. But I thought you had all given up on me. Mecca shook his head, his hand resting on her shoulder. I was wrong to leave you here. We all were. I just did not know how to explain what I felt. And I'm sorry. I forgot the vows we made to each other. I'm so sorry, Adama. I failed you. Choma and Obina approached too, their expressions somber. Choma knelt beside her mother, taking her hand. Mom, we are very sorry. We were angry and we don't understand why. Please, can you forgive us? Adama's heart swelled with relief and gratitude. She squeezed Choma's hand, a small smile forming on her lips. Yes, my daughter, I forgive you. And I hope you can forgive me too. I have done wrong, but I have tried to learn from my mistakes. Obina stepped forward then and said, his voice barely a whisper, we want to be a family again, Mama. Let us help you go back home. Emeka and the children gathered around her, their warmth surrounding her like a protective shield. They helped her to her feet and supported her as they made their way back to the car. For the first time in a long while, Adama felt truly loved, the burden of guilt beginning to lift as she realized her family had not abandoned her after all. As they left the compound, she looked back at her old home and felt relief, waving goodbye to the spirit of her grandmother and her parents. Back at home, Adama began her slow recovery, her family by her side. Chioma and Obinna took turns helping her, showing patience and understanding, while Emeka was there every step of the way, encouraging her to take each day at her own pace. Her health improved gradually, and with each passing day, she felt a renewed strength, both in body and in spirit. One afternoon, as she sat in the garden with her children, Adama shared stories of her childhood, of Mama's kindness, her wisdom, and her sacrifices. She spoke openly of her regrets and the lessons she had learned, hoping her children would carry those lessons forward. We must always care for one another, she said gently, looking at Chioma and Obinna. Family is our strength, and when we turn our backs on each other, we lose a part of ourselves. Her children listened intently, their faces thoughtful as they absorbed her words. In the months that followed, Adama continued to improve and her relationship with her family blossomed anew. The bond they shared grew stronger, built on a foundation of understanding, forgiveness, and compassion. She spent time helping those in her community, reaching out to the elderly and those in need, honoring her grandmother's memory by living with kindness and humility. As she sat by the window watching the sunset with her family, she knew in that moment her grandmother's spirit had finally found rest, and so had she. Thank you, Mama, she whispered into the night, a soft smile on her lips. Emeka looked at her, squeezing her hand. What did you say, my love? Adama turned to him, her eyes shining with gratitude. I was just thanking someone who had taught me the true meaning of love, patience, and forgiveness. They sat together in silence. The past no longer a weight in Adama's heart, but a source of wisdom, guiding her towards a life filled with compassion and understanding. She had found redemption, not through suffering, but through love. The same love she had once denied her grandmother, and the love her family had given her despite her mistakes. And in that love, Adama knew lay the ultimate lesson, that forgiveness, both given and received, was a path to healing and wholeness. The story of Adama and her grandmother became a tale passed down through her children and their children and their children's children, a lesson in humility, compassion, and the importance of family. Elders would tell the story eventually to young ones, reminding them that the bonds of family are sacred and that every act of kindness or cruelty would one day find its way back to them. For Adama, her journey had come full circle, and she spent the rest of her life honoring her grandmother's memory, teaching her children and her grandchildren the importance of patience, love, and forgiveness. And in this way, the legacy of Mamuche lived on, not only in Adama's heart, but in the hearts of generations to come. The end.